It's about time now, so we can start. We have some chat here. Okay, Rick says excellent. Thanks. Thank you, Rick, for giving us the webinar topic for next month. All right, so an official welcome to everyone once again. Thank you so much for taking time out to join this session with Mnemonic and with Michael Wolfe. I would just explain to you on your, if you're not familiar, if you're using the GoTo training panel for the first time, you can raise your hand if you have a question, but we would address all the questions at the end. So the best would be you can just send in your question in the chat. I'll keep monitoring the chat, and in the sequence that we receive the questions, I'll ask Michael to address them at the end of the session. And if I would just introduce Michael as well. So Michael is a standards implementation consultant who specializes in creating and implementing simple yet thorough quality management systems that are both audit and user-friendly and yield impressive improvement results in a variety of industries to a variety of standards. And myself, I'm Jessica. I'm the marketing manager here at Mnemonic. Mnemonic, and since it's we provide environmental health, safety, and quality professionals with tools to comply with regulations. Since it's a quality management system session, I think something that's really relevant to you would be our auditing app that you can use on any mobile device. You can have it on iOS or Android, or you can even use it on a web to conduct internal audits. Or if you're an auditor or a consultant, you can use it to audit the systems. So if you would like to get in touch with us for your auditing needs, please go to our website mnemonic.com, or you can, at the end of this session, there will be a post-webinar survey where you can leave your comments that you would like to who you would like us to get in touch with you. So I would like to just thank you again for taking time out for this session. Since we have more people joining in, if you would quickly, in like 30 seconds, if you would just like to write down your name, where you're from, what organization you work for, it would be nice. We'll just kind of know our audience better. So you can send that in the chat here. Oh yes, I'm not Jonathan. My name.
I saw that was great.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, I actually don't even look like a Jessica, but I get that a lot too. So yeah. So I would just like to say that's Janice Pilgrim from BGIS. She's an HSC coordinator. Melanie, Melanie from BGIS Canada. Danny Pasturash, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing your name right here, Environmental Health and Safety Coordinator, again at BGIS. Then Abraham in Kenya, Sino Hydro Corp, Alejandro Stevens, Lisa, Praveen, okay, I did pronounce that well, Carmen Ramirez, Ashley Davis. Thank you all so much for joining our session and introducing yourself. It's always good to know who else is there. Ashley, P3 Group Process Improvement, Joachim Almeida, a telecom company, as he said, working in Algeria, North Africa. All right, so I think we can start. So that's Karen Holiday. So we have more people joining in. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your time. That's Rick Cassabon, John Bembry, welcome. John Bembry works at WRPD, Warner Robins Police Department. Nice. And Mr. Shiva Cannon from Riviera, Kelly Wright from Orica, Canada. Welcome everyone. So Michael, if you would like to, it's all yours. If you would like to just start the presentation, please go ahead.
Absolutely. Okay. I also appreciate everybody's time. I know everybody's time is valuable, so taking a little bit of it to join Jessica and I, we're very grateful for that. And I appreciate working with Mnemonic. They're a fantastic partner in the industry. So as has been promoted, we're going to be looking at the idea of taking the stress out of your QMS. Unfortunately, we've been given an hour, and so I had to tailor it to that time frame. So I couldn't give as many things as I would have enjoyed sharing. And also, unfortunately, there's no one size fits all, and there's no magic pill that we can take that'll immediately eliminate all the stress from your quality management system. But I do believe spending the 45 minutes together and then some Q&A, I do believe I'll be able to share a few things that you maybe take one or two small things back to your companies that could help begin the process of de-stressing your quality management system. So first, to prepare for this concept, to prepare for this webinar, we surveyed 100 companies and we asked them, what is the most stressful part of your quality management system? In Family Feud style, the top 100 answers are on the board. And the top answer we got was management support is seemed to be a big stress with a lot of the companies we talked to in preparation for this presentation. The next one was employee participation. Employee engagement came in a close second. The third one was internal auditing. We had a lot of feedback. This wasn't the number one answer, obviously, but we had a lot of comments and a lot of conversation based upon the stress of the internal auditing program. And the last one was the corrective action system in general. We had a lot of conversations, we had a lot of dialogue going back and forth in these companies that we surveyed in respect to corrective actions not being closed on time, not being effective, corrective actions resulting in the same nonconformances over and over and over again, and things of that nature. So what I did is I took these four categories, these four stresses, these four concepts, and I built what we're going to talk about over the next 45 minutes-ish to an hour, depending on the level of question and answer time at the end. And so going in order, I want to talk a little bit about winning top management's support. So one of the values that I can add as an implementation consultant is I have been on executive teams. I've been in top management. I've owned some companies in the past, and so I understand the stress, no pun intended. I understand the stress between needing to make a profit and needing a quality management system. Needing to run the company and being nimble and being responsive and having the freedom to and the flexibility to run the company well, but needing the controls of the quality management system. And so I have that perspective a little bit from the top management side. And so I wanted to share a couple things that we could do. First, Jessica, if you could launch that poll, that first poll question. We have a question we'd like to ask you just so I can see the, kind of poll the audience and see what we have.
Sure, Michael. So I'm going to launch the poll with how involved is your top management in the quality in the QMS? I actually misspelled it as QSM. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so how involved is your top management in the quality management system? Please ignore the Q, it's QMS, not QSM. Is it extremely supportive, it's somewhat supportive, or not supportive at all? So we're going to give like 5 more seconds if people want to participate.
Jessica, how do I see those results?
I will have to tell you the results. I can share it with everyone, but it just I hope you would be able to see them since you're an attendee too. All right, so okay, so we have 57%, or in fact 60% people saying that it is somewhat supportive, 37% people saying extremely supportive, and it's good to know that only 3% of the people, that's a very small fraction, saying it's not supportive at all. Excellent. So I'm going to share the results here on the screen. I'm not sure, Michael, if you can see the results.
That's okay. You're talking them help, because with only 3% at not very supportive, that helps me know not to focus in as much time on this section as some of the others. So that's good to know.
Okay.
All right. So am I back on?
Yes,
my screen? Okay, great. Yes. Okay, so a couple things when we talk about top management. I personally, I'm a glass half full guy. That's just me, who I am as a person. If there's ever a problem, I see it as an opportunity. If there's ever a risk, I see it as an opportunity. If there's ever bad news, I find good news. I find good news out of it, because bad news can lead to good news. If I know what's going wrong, I can make a plan to fix it. So what I want to do, and the way I structured this webinar, is instead of having a lecture-based webinar, I'm going to share a lot of stories and a lot of things I've seen in my client base, a lot of things I've seen just in the industry in general. And so we're going to look at the glass half full case studies. The first one is, I'm a big proponent of looking forward, not backward. A lot of top management teams, a lot of executive teams, if they're a public company, they're constantly looking forward to the next quarterly, reporting for the stock market. If they're a private company, they're looking at, their trends, their accounts receivable, they're, making sure they have payroll. So they're constantly looking forward. And if we, as we're running our quality management systems, if we are consistently looking backwards, it's going to be difficult to win top management supports. Now, don't get me wrong, we have to look backwards. That's the whole point of the management review is, hey, this is where we've come from since our last management review. These are our trends. This is what was going on. But if we stop there, and if we always focus on that, it's going to be hard to win and keep top management support. And so I want us to also look forward. And I have one particular client who was struggling, and because of confidentiality issues, I'm not allowed to share any of the company names or anything, but I have one particular client who was struggling with this approach. Their former approach was they were consistently reporting up to top management all of the losses. And top management is used to getting bad news all the time. And so I encourage them to think of a different approach. And so they lost $125,000 this one particular year on a poor quality supplier. And for years, they kept badgering top management with this loss. We're losing, we're losing, we're losing, we're losing. And I said, why don't you approach it to communicate with top management and say, hey, we found a way that we can increase our profit by $125,000 next year. And so they shot an email up to the top management team. They said, listen, we found a way that we can increase our profit by $125,000 next year. Let me know if you're interested. They received an email response within about 9 seconds, where before, as they were consistently badgering with the loss and the bad news and the negativity, they weren't soliciting responses. They weren't receiving any invitations, so to speak, to have deeper conversations about it. When they used the P word, all of a sudden top management was interested. And so top management said, hey, we're interested. Obviously, who wouldn't want to increase our profit? Let's talk about it. And so they were able to then share the same information that they were trying to share year over year over year in the past, but because they took a new approach, they were welcomed to share it. And thankfully, with this new approach, they were able to save about $78,000, $79,000 the next year. They weren't able to hit that whole goal, but they went from losing $125,000 in one year to only losing about $50-some thousand the next year. And it was all because they were pointing out the opportunity rather than pointing out the failure. So that was one particular story. Another one was it's similar, highlighting success, not consistently focusing on failures. Everybody knows. Let's face it. We know what we do wrong. We know our weaknesses. We know our rough spots. We know when we blow it. And it's not very helpful when a lot of other people, highlight that. I'm not always excited when people want to point out my flaws, of which I have some. I would rather look at the successes. Now, do we need to look at failures? Absolutely. Because if you don't learn from your failures, you're going to repeat them. So I'm not advocating ignoring mistakes and ignoring failures, but what I am advocating for is how we highlight them, how much we focus on them. And it's similar to a company. When somebody does something wrong, we're very quick to email a complaint. We're very quick to give a negative reply. We're very quick to leave a negative review on social media, et cetera. But we're not as inclined to go around saying all these good things and putting all these great things out there. I fly a lot. I fly 3 times a week, and it's very rare that I email my airline and say, hey, you guys did a great job here. But to be fully honest, when they lose my luggage, they get an email from me. So if we flip this from this negative culture to a positive culture, we can help. And so I had another client, they were struggling with their scrap to overrun ratio. And what I mean by that is in their particular industry, they knew that their particular production processes produce 20% scrap. They know that it's in the process. And so they build that into their quoting, they build that into their overruns. And so a data point that is more important to them than scrap rate is their overrun to scrap ratio. And so if they say we're going to overrun 20% on this job because we know we're going to lose 20%, if they overrun 20% but they have 30% scrap, they're now going to short ship the customer. And so what they've been tracking is their internal scrap to overrun ratio. And they were really struggling to meet their goal over a 2-year period. And they kept harping on the failure. We missed our goal again. We missed our goal again. We missed our goal again. And so top management was just grating on them to consistently hearing all this negativity of we keep failing, we keep failing, we keep failing. And finally, somebody in a management review spoke up and said, hey, time out. Okay. Did you notice, though, that over the last 2 years, we reduced the ratio of the internal scrap to the overruns? Yeah, we didn't make our goal. Everybody could clearly see we didn't make our goal, but can you see that we found a way to reduce that ratio? I want to talk to who did that. I want to talk to the team leader who did that, who found that way. And so they went and they did an investigation, and they asked this question: how we know we missed your goal, but how did we have that 12% reduction last year and the 3% reduction the year before that? How did we do that? And they had a Kaizen event, they had a meeting, and they started openly talking about it. And when they found out what they were doing differently to reduce that ratio, they honed in on that, and the next year they actually made their goal. And so instead of consistently pointing out the bad news and the failure and the negativity, they went a different approach, and they started highlighting the successful part of it, and the next year they actually made their goal. A third one is return on investment. What makes top management is ROI. Their job is to make sure the company turns a profit. If a company doesn't make a profit, that company's not going to be in business much longer. Everybody's going to lose their job. And so I had a particular client that if they would have purchased this $35,000 software program, they knew they needed it. Everybody knew they needed it. But they kept harping on this. Oh, we got to spend this $35,000. We got to spend this $35,000. And top management, being ROI, thinking and looking at the QMS as already being a burdensome system, looking at the QMS as already taking a lot of time and a lot of money, looking at the QMS in a negative way, they were looking at this as another bill. So when we showed through data, when we showed through case studies, when we showed through scenarios that if we would invest this $35,000 in the QMS software, they'll actually save $50,000 over the next year. So in a sense, the software is going to be free. And when we were able to show top management that the software was going to be free, they wrote a purchase order for it within the next 3 weeks. And they saved it ended up being about $37,000 the first year that they saved. And then every year after that, all of that savings was profit. So again, top management sometimes, and with our audience here, it doesn't seem to be that case with the 3%. So I don't want to spend too much time. I'd rather focus on some of the other areas that we talked about. But a lot of times, top management, they struggle to see the value of a quality management system because many times the quality management system points out the negativity, points out the problems, points out the missed goals and things of that nature. And we do need to take all of those things into consideration, but we've got to be very, very, very careful that we don't focus on the glass being half full all the time to the point where we lose interest and people just want to say, look, all you have to share with me is bad news, all the problems, and I know we have those problems. I know we have bad news, but that's all we ever hear about. So flipping the approach to highlighting successes, highlighting the goals that we do make, highlighting the victories, highlighting when we're moving in the right direction, and learning from those things to then apply them to the areas where we're missing or not doing so well. Those are some ideas that you can do to help garnish top management's support. And since there was only 3% that have that top management's not very supportive at all, I think those three things would be what I would like to share with you today. The next one, and Jessica, I'll have you poll that question in a minute. The next one was employee engagement. This was the second highest area of answer to what are the biggest stresses in your quality management system. So again, to see where our current audience base is, Jessica, let's launch that poll question.
Here you are, Michael. How engaged are your employees in the QMS? So people are just starting to put in the results here. Okay, I'll give it 3 more seconds. All right, so for employees, it is, okay, so this is a higher percentage compared to management. So there's 33% say they are not engaged at all, compared to just 3% not supportive management. 62% say somewhat engaged, and only a very small fraction, 6%, say they are extremely engaged. So I'm going to close the poll and share the results with everyone.
All right.
Okay. So that's 60% somewhat engaged, 6% extremely engaged, and 34% not engaged at all.
Okay, so obviously this is a little bit more of an important topic to our current audience. So let's kind of go through this one a little bit slower, a little bit more. Am I back on the screen, Jessica?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
yes,
great.
You are.
Okay, so again, want to talk about some case studies, but I can share a little bit more tangible tips and goals in this one, since this one hits our audience a little bit stronger, a little bit more. So again, we're looking at generating interest. A lot of times the way human nature is we want to know what's in it for me. I always have a joke. My favorite radio station is WIIFM. What's in it for me? And again, at the end of the day, that's what human beings usually care about. What am I getting out of this? What am I getting for this? Why should I engage? If you think about psychology, we make a decision if we're going to like a movie in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the movie. Some people don't realize that, but that's just subconscious. That's how it works. When people walk into a room, we take a look at them, and within a few seconds, we generalize what we think of them by the way they look, by the way they sound. That's why the commercial industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, because so much goes into, I'm going to make a decision if I'm going to buy that based upon what it looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like. And so knowing that quality management system interaction is psychology, we can take advantage of that. And so a couple things we want to look at. The first and most important thing is keep it simple. I had a client was struggling with their employee retention, was struggling with their employee training program, was struggling with just getting good workers and retaining them. And so they actually hired my services to walk through the hiring and the training process. And so what I actually did was they actually hired me as an employee in a scenario to see how it would work. And so I applied for the job on the internet just like everybody else would. I submitted my resume just like everybody else did. I went through the interviewing process just like everybody else did. I showed up for the orientation just like every other employee would. And when it came down to the quality system training, they put me in a little boardroom, a small boardroom with 5 or 6 chairs around a table, and they handed me a quality manual that was 76 pages long. And they said, here, this is our quality manual, read it, and when you're done, you're going to sign off that you understand it. I got to be honest with you, I got to page 7. I closed the book. I signed the acknowledgement that I understood it, and I said, I'm done. And they hired me in a quality position. I was going to be doing some of the calibrating and things of that nature. That's what they were hiring me for. And they gave me their calibration procedure. Now, just to give you some perspective, this wasn't a company with 600 employees all across the globe. This was a machine shop with 36 employees. And their calibration procedure was 22 pages long. It was filled with so much information, so many minute details that it was very difficult to read. And so why do I share that? What we do as humans is we make a decision if we're going to engage or disengage with something based upon complexity. Even if you think about this webinar, if I would have 16 paragraphs of information on this slide, you probably would tune out because you would think I'm going to read it to you. You would think there's no way I can comprehend all of this information. And so the more complex something is, okay, the more we find ways to avoid it. And so this particular case study here worked with a company with 45 employees. They had 53 they had more procedures than employees, and the procedures were paragraph based. They had the structure of scope and the structure of all these different documents that reference the different documents that reference the different documents. And they had, by the time it got to the point where it was going to tell me what I needed to do, I was on page 5. And so they had these 53 paragraph based procedures with a total of 300 plus pages of information. If I would have read every procedure, it would have taken me a couple days. So what we did is we restructured their system. We converted their procedures to 39 flowcharts. So we took their 53 procedures down to 39. Like, for example, they had a separate procedure for internal document control, a separate procedure for external document control, a separate procedure for record control, a separate procedure for customer documents. They had like 7 procedures all based upon document control. And 4 or 5 of the pages of each of these procedures were actually copy and pastes of each other. And so we were able to reduce that, and we converted the paragraphs to flowcharts. And what happened was the employee engagement went up because we were showing the employees we are drowning you in information not relevant to what you actually do for your daily tasks. And when we pulled all that information out and we gave them information that was relevant to them, they began to engage more in the system, and the employee participation, the employee engagement increased exponentially. Another one is to delegate and elevate. The more we force upon people, the more they will resist it. The more that's forced upon me, my tendency is to resist it. It's human nature. And so a lot of times what happens is, and there's a couple different ways this can go. A lot of times what happens is people who aren't engaged in the actual situation or activity are the people making the decisions. And this is with decisions with what procedures to write, how many procedures to write, what content to put in the procedures, what should the goals be, what should the data we're tracking be, what should our key performance indicators be. And so we make these decisions and we flow that information down and say, here's what you need. Here's your procedure, here's your process, here's your KPI, here's your data, here's your goals, go. And the very people that we expect to engage and participate in and succeed under this, we've not taken any of their input. We haven't given them a chance to say, that goal doesn't even make sense in this department. That there's no way we can make that goal because don't say. I've been in cases where the experts, the people who actually do the job, we're desperately trying to show the company, show the quality management people, show the top management of the people, if you keep doing it this way, it's not as good as if we would do it this way. And sometimes I've actually watched employees get shut down. And so we need to begin to shift towards delegating and elevating. We want to get the experts involved, and the experts are the employees who've been doing that tangible task for years. We want to see, what goals do you think we could hit? What data do you think is important? What should we be watching because you're the expert in this area? And it's the same in reverse. I wouldn't expect a CNC programmer to be making the decisions on the profit and loss sheet of the company. And so the chief financial officer shouldn't be making the decisions on what metrics we're going to track in the machining department, so to speak. And so we need this idea. So the former, I had a client where the boardroom made all of these goals and said, this is the goals that we want to impose, and we want all of these different departments to reach, and they weren't attainable. They didn't make any sense, and so the employees just disengaged. They knew they were going to fail because they weren't goals that would make any sense for what they were doing, and they didn't have the resources in place. They didn't have what they needed to make those goals, and so they just disengaged because they knew they were going to fail anyway. So why even try? And this particular company was having a lot of turnover, and so the new approach, we went in and we shifted the thinking. And we said, what goal do you think you can hit? And they would come up with their own goals by department, by individuals, by teams. And we then were able to hold them accountable to those goals. And when they missed those goals, there was no excuse. There was no ability to point anywhere because they came up with those goals. So we did the same thing in a couple other companies with procedures and processes. We would go into the employees who were disengaged and who were struggling and who were stressed, and we said, what's your number one problem? And they said, well, these procedures don't make any sense because they don't work for the way we actually need to do our job. And I said, have you ever shared that with anybody before? Oh, absolutely, we share it all the time, but nobody listens. And so we were able to say, why don't you write a procedure in the way that works for you, the way that works best for you, the way to do this better. And so we wrote all new procedures from the perspective of the experts, the people who actually do this job. And within a year and a half, the non-conformances at the registrar audits went down, the non-conformances at the internal audits went down, and the performance metrics were all increasing because we got the input and the advice from the experts. And so two things happen simultaneously when we delegate and elevate. Actually, three. The first thing that happens is employees will naturally engage more because now all of a sudden they feel valued. They feel like they're cared about. Their voice is being heard. They feel like an expert, as they are. That's why they do what they do on a daily basis. And so when they feel that, they engage more. When they engage more, they give more input and more feedback. When we take their input and feedback and incorporate it, everything improves. Non-conformances decrease, performance metrics increase. Okay. The last one in this category, this is actually one of my favorites. I tend to like competition. I'm a competitive guy. It's just who I've been all my life. I love a challenge, and honestly, I don't like to lose. Just being honest, telling you a little bit about myself. Everybody loves a little healthy competition, especially if bragging rights are on the line. One of my favorite business stories from the early 1900s, and it happens to be in my home state in Pennsylvania. Charles Schwab, back in the early 1900s, owned some steel mills. And he had this one particular steel mill that was underperforming. They were actually losing money. And so one day he went to this particular steel mill, and at the end of the first shift, he asked the employees, how many heat melts did you do today? And they said 6. He took out a big piece of chalk and he wrote a huge number 6 with a circle around it on the floor, and he left. When the next shift came in, they came into this massive number 6 written on the middle of the floor, and then they started inquiring about it. And they said, what's this number 6? What's going on here? And somebody said, well, I don't know, but the big boss came in today, and at the end of the first shift, he asked them how many heats they did, and he wrote down the number 6 for the amount of heats they did that day. And so they kind of thought a little bit about it, and they said, well, okay, let's all right, we're in. So Charles Schwab came back in the next morning. The number 6 was erased, and there was a number 7 with a circle on it. And the first shift guys came in and said, hey, what's this number 7? And they said, well, that's the amount of heats that the second shift did. They saw our 6 on the floor, and so they put a 7. So when the second shift came in that day, there was a number 10 on the floor. And what had happened was Charles Schwab created this sense of competition, this sense of pride, this sense of, hey, whoa, 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 they can't outdo us. And that mill within 8 months became Charles Schwab's largest income producing steel mill. And so the point being, there's nothing wrong if it's done correctly. There's nothing wrong with a little healthy competition. There's a new fad in the business world right now called this one silo. I'm not opposed to it. I think it's very healthy to have unity in a company. A company in disunity and chaos is going to fall apart. But with the law of unintended consequences in this one silo has become, well, don't create any competition. Everybody's got to be in unity, one silo. And so now what we've done is our company is only as strong as the weakest department or the weakest team or the weakest link, because we don't want to create any competition or any angst between the departments and the teams. I think that's a negative consequence of the one silo approach. And so I had a company do the same thing. They said, hey, listen, here's what we're going to do. Okay. If any department hits our goal 2 months early, okay, because we have a goal for 2019, let's just say it was actually in 2017, but let's hypothetically say this year. Any department that hits our 2019 goal by the end of October gets the entire week of Christmas off paid. Not taken away from their normal vacation. This is above and beyond their normal vacation. And so what had happened was, in this company, there was 7 teams in this particular company. 3 of the teams hit their goal in October, and those 3 teams got the entire week of Christmas off, not just Christmas Day. And so they got a free week's paid vacation because they hit their goal 2 weeks earlier. Well, next year, out of those 7 teams, 5 of those teams hit their goals early. And so what had happened was they were creating, this idea of competition, not against each other, but competition against the system. And so that's one example. I have about 5 or 6 clients that have asked me to come in and help them find ways to create this healthy level of competition, either team to team or team against the entire system, team against the goals. Because a lot of times if we meet our goals by the end of 2019, but we met it the week before the end, that's great. But wouldn't it have been great if we met it a month earlier or 2 months earlier? Or what if we met the goal by 5%, but we really could have beat the goal by 20%? So one thing you can do is you can create this idea, this culture of a healthy competition. And if you don't feel comfortable from department to department, I get that. Create the competition against the system. And what will happen is, as humans, our natural pride, the healthy kind of pride, and our natural desire to win will naturally draw more engagement out of the employees. And so this is one of my favorite hot button topics, because most people, if they were honest, don't like to lose. Most people, if they were honest, like a little bit of a challenge and like a little bit of a healthy competition. In fact, the IATF 16949 standard, the automotive version of ISO 9001, they actually put into their standard an employee motivation requirement. There is an actual requirement in the automotive standard for companies to come up with ways to motivate employees. And so another thing you can do is, if you don't want to create a competition, you can create an incentive program. For example, I have one client that if somebody comes up with an improvement that saves the company a certain amount of tangible money, that employee gets half of that money as a bonus. And there was one particular client in general that I was just there 3 weeks ago. I have one particular client where one of their customer service representatives came up with an idea that would make an improvement to the company. It saved the company $12,000. I sent some change. I just used the number generically. It saved the company $12,000 over the next 6 months tangibly. That person was given a check for $6,000. When the other people around in that customer service department realized somebody just got a $6,000 bonus, they started engaging in the system real quick, and it didn't lose the company $6,000 because they saved $12,000 over that time frame. So again, finding ways to show the employees in the company, there's a way that you can win. And if you engage, if you participate, if you rise to the challenge, if you come up with improvement ideas, I mean, and the sky's the limit. That was just one particular example. But one of my favorite aspects is employee engagement and awareness. It's a very weak area in a lot of companies, and hence the 32%, the 33% not engaged, as the poll question answered. And that's why I have McDay offers a lot of employee engagement and awareness trainings for both top management and for both employees as well, because this is obviously a big ticket item. And I have a feeling at the end of the webinar, when we do our Q&A, we might get some questions on this one. Okay. The last area, those two last areas were internal auditing and corrective actions. And I lump them together in what I call the non-invoice clauses. And what I mean by that is there are specific requirements in the different quality management system standards that you can directly invoice a customer for. Production, quality, inspection, all of those things generate specific income. But then there's some requirements in the standards that don't. There are some requirements that you cannot bill the customer for, you cannot invoice them, they're not money-making requirements. And so the temptation of a lot of companies is to ignore them or avoid them or take the path of least resistance. What's the least amount of work we can do to keep the cert on the wall, but not to take up any extra time away from all of the things that actually make the company money. And so, Jessica, if you could launch that third poll question, that'd be great.
Sure, perfect. So does your company currently use employees as internal auditors, or do you outsource internal auditing? So I'll give like 3 seconds more. Oh, wow. Oh, so this is, I'm going to close the poll and share the results. 89, almost like 90% of the people use employees as internal auditors, and only 11% outsource internal auditing.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So let's kind of go through these non-invoice clauses. What I find to take a lot of the stress out of a quality management system is to do what you do best. And I want to look at a couple case studies. I want to look at a couple ideas. The first thing is I want to tackle the corrective actions first, because this is one of the biggest weaknesses that I see when I actually go audit. So for example, I went to audit a company. I did their internal audit for them. They assembled circuit boards, and so they had an assembly department that used 2-part epoxy, glues. You mix part A and part B, and there's your glue. And in the assembly area, they had a desktop yellow, chemical cabinet where they kept these epoxy glues. And they had a clipboard on the front, hung on the front of the cabinet. And once a month, the assembler would go in, look for expired material, take any out, and if there was any, and log it on this log. And so this log that was on the front door of this cabinet had 12 months, where they would do a checkbox. It's so simple. A 7-year-old could do it. So I was doing my internal audit. I got to this area, and I saw 3 of the last 12 months of the log was never filled out. Okay, so I looked in there. There was nothing expired. Not the end of the world. Okay, and so I gave them a minor nonconformance. And their corrective action is pretty weak. Their corrective action was to train the assembly manager to double check the log every month. And so that was their prerogative, and that was their corrective action. Very weak. The assembly manager, honestly, he thought he was an assembly manager. He didn't know he was a daycare worker, so he ended up quitting 3 months later and getting another job as a production manager in a production department. The new person they hired, the new assembly manager, he thought he was coming in to be an assembly manager at a production company. He didn't know he was coming in to be a daycare worker, and so he didn't even care about this log or know about this log. I came back in the next year, and again, 4 months out of the year were missing on this log. So now they got a major nonconformance for that because it was a double finding year over year. They got a minor nonconformance against their corrective action system. And so now they have a major nonconformance and a minor nonconformance because of a weak, lazy corrective action. So a lot of times what I find is we're treating the symptoms, not the sickness. And we put a Band-Aid on the symptom and it just comes back a little bit later or a little bit different somewhere else. And so what I've found is a lot of times people are given an unrealistic amount of time to finish a corrective action. So we find a major nonconformance somewhere, we have issues, we have rejections, something happens that needs a corrective action. And because we have to get back to our real job, we're given a week or 6 days or 3 days or 2 days or 2 weeks to fix this issue. And there's a lot of pressure to get it done as soon as possible, as quick as possible, so we can get back to making money. We can get back to doing what we do to make money. And so what do? We slap a Band-Aid on it. And so ineffective corrective actions, are a big issue. So one particular client I have is when there was an ineffective corrective action, or when the corrective action form or the 8D or whatever it is the company uses to document this, if they were weak, the quality management representative would literally at his computer would make it sound better, and then would close it out. And when the register auditor came in, it looked like it was a great corrective action because the quality management rep literally made stuff up and just made it sound better than it actually was. And so what was happening was they were getting away with that in the short run, but because the corrective actions were weak, they were starting to show up again in repetitive nonconformances, and eventually their quality management system started falling apart. And so what they're doing now is the quality management rep, by the way, yes, Rick, the answer to that is yes. The quality management rep now, if a weak corrective action comes across his desk, it's forwarded to top management. Top management calls a meeting with the person who filled that out, and that person has to explain it in front of the executive team. They're now beginning to hold people accountable. And here's the reason why I'm such a huge proponent of effective corrective actions. And I've shown it to some of my clients through legitimate actual data. If you take less time to get a corrective action done more quickly, you inadvertently think you're doing great because you're getting back to making money and you've taken as little amount of time as possible, but the cost of poor quality comes in because now when that same thing happens again, you have to spend double the time on it because now you're recorrecting it. And then you're recorrecting it again. And each time you have to correct it a little better, because if you don't, your register auditor is going to come in and give you a nonconformance against your corrective action program. And so it actually takes more time, more money, and more stress to do a weak, quick corrective action than it does to do a thorough corrective action the right way the first time. So Band-Aids, we have to stop putting Band-Aids on our corrective action. The next one is ground zero. Another client I had is they actually had a quality management rep whose job it was to go study the root cause, okay, to go evaluate what happened and to actually do the corrective action all by himself, alone, in a vacuum, because top management did not want anybody else's time being wasted with silly corrective actions. It's literally the words they used. And so what would happen is a nonconformance would come across the quality management rep's desk. He would take his corrective action form. He'd go investigate it, having no idea in some cases because he wasn't a machinist or he wasn't an inspector, or so he would try and guess around and he'd fill out these corrective actions. And so this quality management rep was the one determining the root cause and the corrective actions, and it was just very, very ineffective, and the same problems were happening over and over and over again. So instead of stopping fires from starting, they just kept putting fires out. The new approach they started to take is the people who contributed to or were responsible for, or the people who discovered the nonconformance, they were required to determine the root cause and to come up with the corrective action and to implement the corrective action. And what had happened was they actually spent less time the next year on corrective actions than they did. One person spent more time in 2018 than 5 or 6 people spent in 2019. So the company actually saved time and saved money by doing it right the first time. So now let's tackle the so the last one, sorry, embrace the YouTube culture. And then we'll tackle the internal audit issue. Another big one. This has helped a lot of companies. I promote this a lot, and I can actually offer services to help you accomplish this. Let's face it, putting together IKEA furniture would be easier with a video. So work instructions is a big buzz item right now in a lot of different industries, with a lot of the globalization of our economy, with the globalization of our culture, of our workforce, language barriers, things of that nature. Video-based work instructions are the new kind of hot topic going on right now. So, right now I may have a binder of all these different documents with words, with photographs, and I'm flipping through this binder, or I may have them posted on the line in front of me, or I may have them on my computer. But again, I have to go to them. I have to read them. I have to look at pictures. I have to, or I can have a tablet, boom, right up in front of my line, or wherever my workstation is, and I can actually watch a video of this task being done. This has cut employee training in half, the time of employee training, because now you show the video to that employee once to make sure they don't have any questions, to make sure they fully understand what they saw, and now that video can be their guide as they learn to do that whatever that task is over time. And every time they get a little farther, they need less of the video, and eventually they don't need the video anymore. So instead of taking 2 people's time, one to consistently stand there and show the person how to do it, you're back running your line over here, and they have access to that video. And so I have a client that flipped all their work instructions to an iPad, a series of iPad videos, and the investment of 5 or 6 iPads on the line was well paid off through not having to have so many people tied up in the employee training program. Okay, and the last one, this is a passionate area of mine. If it quacks, it's a duck. Okay, I don't know what particular companies everybody here represents and what you do, but I can guarantee you one thing. If you hire me to do what you do, I probably won't be able to do it. I won't get it done well, and it'll fall apart because I don't do what you do. I'm not an expert in the area of your expertise. And what we're finding in the industry is there is a newfound shift that's happening, and it's growing rapidly to begin outsourcing internal auditing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The first reason is actually, I would say I don't have the specific data. I probably receive 10 to 15 phone calls a year of a panic on the other end of the phone of, hey, our registrar audits next month. We haven't done any of our internal auditing yet this year. Can you quick come in and do an audit? Or we're behind schedule on our auditing and we can't catch up. Can you come in and do an audit for us? And there's a couple reasons for that. One, it's a non-invoicing clause, so to speak, and so top management takes some volunteers, or in many cases voluntolds, and says, hey, I need you to do an internal audit just to keep this cert on the wall. We need to do an internal audit, but do me a favor, do it as fast as you can because I need you back on the line. Okay, or do it as fast as you can because I need you doing, inspecting. I need you doing order reviews. I need you to get back to what you actually really do here. So do it as fast as you can. And so we do that. We come in, we do it as fast as we can, and it's not very thorough. It's a little sloppy. The second thing we're adding to that is we're taking people who are not auditors, who are not experts at auditing, very, very little training, and the training they get is not very thorough. And we're saying, hey, go be an expert in this area. Go perform this task that you've not really done well. You've not really done a lot. It's not because you're a bad person. It's just you're not an auditor, just like I'm not what you do. And if you would give me 2 days of training on what you do and say, hey, go at it, I probably wouldn't do a very good job at it, just being honest. Okay. So what's happening a lot of times is we're taking people who are not auditors, we're giving them a real high level, quick training, and we're saying, now go do this really well and be an expert at it. Oh, but do us a favor, do it as quickly as you possibly can as well. And so audit schedules typically fall behind. If you're doing quarterly audits or if you're doing monthly audits, usually they're falling behind schedule. We're not getting them done quick enough or in time. And if we are getting them done, they're really sloppy. The other dynamic that we're seeing in the industry is people also don't want to be in this tattletale mentality. I don't want to tell on my coworker. I don't want to write a nonconformance against that department, or I don't want to be looked at as the bad guy. I don't want to get a bad reputation around here, and I am definitely not going to write a nonconformance up against management. I mean, that's just career suicide. And so because of all these and many more issues, companies are drastically quickly moving to outsourcing their internal audits to experts who, quite frankly, don't mind writing up a nonconformance against management. So this one particular client that I worked with, they were finding on average 4 or 5 nonconformances a year in their internal audit. But their registrar audit was consistently finding 12 to 15 nonconformances every year. And it was creating this stress between their registrar, the relationship between the registrar and the company, because the registrar auditor was starting to ask the right questions. Why are you not seeing these things in your internal audit? And so that's when they made the decision to begin outsourcing their internal audit. And over a 3-year period, they've decreased from 12 to 15 nonconformances a year in their registrar audit. They've decreased it down to about 3 to 4. And it's because they brought in an expert as an auditor to do their internal auditing on their behalf. So that's the internal auditing section. So just for fun, I want to show a couple images, a couple things that you can do tangibly that kind of back up a little bit about some of the things I shared earlier. So for example, I took this screenshot from a quality manual, and it's nothing crazy. It's just a couple paragraphs of some responsibility, authority, and communication. These are taken right from the ISO standard, and so the company basically delegated to these particular people the responsibilities from the standard. Is there anything wrong with this? Absolutely not. Nothing wrong with it at all. In fact, this is what you should be. You should have some information like this documented somewhere. But what I want to show you next is a different format. Apologize for the screenshot, that it's a little small. But what the difference is here is the difference between paragraph-based information and table-based information. Usually, when we approach something like this, our temptation is to slightly disengage because, okay, I gotta do a lot of reading now. There's fine-tuned details in there. I got fine print. Versus seeing something like this, it immediately wants to draw me in because it's hey, got it. Okay, I got it. It's a bulleted list. I know what I'm responsible for. I understand it. So what I recommend, and for when we implement systems for our clients, we recommend a little bit more of a table-based quality manual rather than a paragraph-based quality manual. Our quality manuals do have some paragraphs in them because there's nothing you can do about that. Paragraphs is just a part of life, but we try to limit them and we try to incorporate a little bit more of a table-based system. If you would procure the services of McDay for an ISO system, you would end up with about a 14 to 15 page quality manual versus a lot of times what I'm used to seeing is a 35, 45, 50 page quality manual. Another one is management reviews. Management review is another hot topic for me. The more effective a management review, the more effective a quality management system. And honestly, the more effective a management review, the more effective an audit. And so this is a management review this is just one screenshot from a 5-page document. And so what this particular company did is they used a management review agenda form, And as they did the management review, somebody would take notes in each one of these little boxes, kind of high-level generic notes. I had no idea what they looked at in their management review. I had no idea what resources they had at their disposal. All I knew is, hey, we had a couple conversations about this, this, and this. I transitioned that company to a presentation-based, PowerPoint-based management review, and where we actually embedded all of the information and the data in the actual management review presentation. And so now what happens is it makes the company more audit friendly. It makes the management review a much more effective and a much more productive. And the reason being is in an ISO 9001 management review, if you do it well, the record from the management review also satisfies 7 other requirements in different places in the ISO standard. So one resource can satisfy 7 requirements. Another one, here's a traditional example. If you would go to the internet and buy a template set or download a template set to get ISO certified or AS9100 certified, if you go to the internet, this is typically what you'll see. And you'll see it's got the header, you see it's got a policy, a purpose, a scope, responsibilities, references to other documents. And by the time you get to the valuable, tangible information you need, you're on page 3. We recommend converting to flowcharts, and it's much more user friendly. It engages much more. It's a lot more effective. And here's the philosophy behind it. Some people believe the more thorough, the more specific, and the more information you give somebody makes it more effective. In some cases, that might be true because you're giving them a lot of information, a lot of data, you're giving them a lot of thoroughness and a lot of specificity. The problem is, though, if I disengage from it, it's not effective because I've disengaged from it. And so more simple information that I actually engage in and use is actually more thorough than more specific information that I try to avoid. Okay, so we look at flowcharts. Okay, the last one is we recommend replacing forms with logs. And one of the reasons we recommend that is you can get more information from a log than you. So a form, you fill out a separate piece of paper every time something happens. 2 things happen in that case. 1, I have to manage this form. And 2, I have a stack of records now, or I've got a lot of records I got to go through one at a time. If you scan them in or save them electronically, I got to open them, close them, open them, close them, open them, close them, or I've got them in a big filing cabinet, whatever. If we take that same information, okay, and we put it on a log rather than separate forms, or we enter it into a database rather than maintaining separate documents, not only do we still have the information, because all the information on that form is now in the log, so we still have all the information, but now we can mine that information with data. And we can produce, Paretos, we can produce bar charts, we can produce, we can get all this valuable information based upon the input rather than having to filter through, 60 or 70 different individual forms. So if you have a system with a lot of forms, you can convert those into logs, and that will take a lot of the stress out of your quality management system as well. So at this point in time, Jessica, if you want to open up to either chat-based or letting people unmute, it's your call.
No, thank you so much, Michael, for sharing such interesting insights and great tips. I think it was presented in a very concise manner. I understood, although I don't have a background in quality management system, but I understood each and everything you said. It's time for question and answers. Please send in your questions here in the chat below, and I will read them out to Michael. Michael, you had 2 questions already. Okay. One is from Alejandro Stevens. When you don't have products but services, the QMS turns more ambiguous. Any suggestions? And he says further that not related with employees, but with the entire system.
So he doesn't have products or services?
No, services.
Oh, okay. So yes, 8.5 of all the standards, it kind of addresses that, and it has the standards have shifted a little bit to understanding that some companies are ISO certified that don't actually tangibly produce anything. So what your product is the output of your service. So what I could say is this. I can relate it a little bit to us because I run McDay. I'm not ISO certified yet. We're going to be ISO certified in 2020, but my firm is ISO compliant, and I don't make anything. And so, for example, one of my services is internal auditing. We provide internal auditing to our clients. So I don't make anything, we provide a service. And so I have a process, an internal auditing process with procedures that my internal auditors follow. So we conduct, if I have, 4 internal auditors, they're all going to conduct an internal audit at one of my clients the exact same way because we've standardized how they approach the audit. We've standardized how they schedule the audit. We've standardized how they document the audit. We've standardized how they report on the audit, and the deliverables are our audit reports. And so even though you don't produce anything, if, for example, I would force my auditors to fill out a 45-page questionnaire and then, print it out and then sign it and then scan it and then email it and then print it out again and then sign it and then scan it and then email it and print. If I put all these burdens of these details on them, they're going to disengage. And so if I keep my system user friendly, my employees are going to be engaged. And even though they're not making something, in the way that they provide the service to the customer, they'll still be engaged. And top management the same way. If I'm constantly looking at all the negative and all the bad, I'm going to disengage as top management and I'm going to get discouraged. So the principles still apply. You're just not producing a product. You're providing a service to a customer.
Alejandro just chimed in saying that they generate renewable energies.
Okay. So again, there's processes and procedures that are needed to generate the renewable electricity or energy the same way every time to have that standard approach. And so there's still probably procedures involved. There's still processes that have to be followed. There's still performance indicators that have to be targets that have to be met. So the principles still apply. It's just you're not machining a widget necessarily. You're providing energy, and if your energy fluctuates, your customers aren't going to be happy, and so you're still providing something. It's just a service rather than a machined widget or an assembled widget. You're providing electricity or you're providing energy, and if your energy fluctuates, I'm not going to be happy. I want to know my energy is going to be there when I need it. I want to know the amount is going to be there when I need it. I want to know that I can rely on it, and if your system does not produce those 3 things that I want it when I want it, I want the amount I want, and I want to be able to rely on it, then you have a breakdown in your system. So whatever activities are in place to make sure I get my energy when I want it, how much I want it, and it's reliable, then that your system needs to be strengthened.
Just in one sentence, Michael, if you can even cover consulting services, because just related to this question, we have Wiki Leung saying that what if the services is something more gray, like project management, consulting, or advisory services?
Well, and that's my field. That's what I do. And so even though I may do business coaching for this particular client, I may implement an ISO 9001 system for this particular client, or I do training for this particular client, I'm still doing them in accordance to documented processes and procedures, and I'm still doing them in accordance to the resources that I've created. So I still have a system and I still have a service. So all of these tips still apply. Here's a hypothetical example. If I wanted to, I could tell all my consultants, you have to carry a black briefcase. It has to have 2 wheels. It has to have 4 compartments. It has to have zippers that lock. It has to have a handle that goes up 7 inches, and it has to be FAA approved. I could do that. I could force that upon my consultants, and they would disengage. And I wouldn't retain good consultants. They'd be like, this guy's crazy. But if I told them, I just need to make sure that you have something that can get your resources to the client, you figure out the best way to do that. Now they're going to engage. So it's still the same principles, whether it's a product or a service, whether it's a tangible service or a little bit more of a gray area. Jessica, we just got a pop-up that said you're experiencing difficulties. Jessica, can you hear me? I think Mnemonic is experiencing difficulties, if anybody can still hear me. It's possible that we lost Mnemonic. Okay, well, I'm going to hang out for a little bit more. I still hear, I can hear
Michael,
somebody. Ah, there you are.
Can you, okay, I think we were experiencing difficulties with the network.
Yes.
We still have 30 people, so please don't go away. We're still continuing. If it happens again, Michael, just in case happens because of the camera, it cannot take so much load. But yes, you were on, so we still have, okay, Alejandro was saying experiencing difficulties. Okay, so I have and a comment as well. So he was asking, do you provide RCA training to support effective development of corrective actions?
Yes, yeah, we do have an RCA training.
And a positive perspective and approach. Rick. Michael, maybe you can just switch off your camera.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, that's better. So Rick, we will send you Michael's contact information. Michael will get in touch with you. I'll send your contact information over to Michael. We still have some people takes like 1 minute. And also, if you're interested in the McDay group, if you're interested in getting some support from an auditing app, let us know in the post-webinar survey, and we'll get in touch. You can also go to our website, either at the McDay's website to consult about their services, or on mnemonic.com's website to know more about us, or send us a request. So let me see if we have more questions here. I'll just call out Nancy, Timothy, Rollins, Nancy Muir, Monique Mighty. If you have any questions, please let us know. Jeff T, Janice Pilgrim, Karen Holiday, Mr. Shiva Cannon, John Bembry. Let us know if you have any questions. And I think we'll wait for another 30 seconds or so. You have any last minute points that you would like to say, Michael?
Yeah, I'm glad to have you back. I lost a lot of your audio for a while. No, I would just say there's a lot of, I can help more specifically and more tangibly on an individual basis. And so I would just encourage you, feel free to reach out to us. Phone calls are free, emails are free, oh, I see a question for the NCR log. Would it be accessible by all parties, or does? Okay, so for the NCR log, that's a cultural decision based upon your company's strengths and weaknesses. Some of my clients, I encourage the NCR log to be available to all employees that have access to a computer, and all employees are responsible to enter and maintain information in that log. I have other clients where that would not work, and it would not be a good thing. And so that log is controlled by one person, and the way that they do the log is they have an NCR email address. Anytime there's a nonconformance, the person that they get emailed, this is what happened, this is what's going on, and then that log is maintained by one person. So there's no right or wrong in that area, Vicky. It's more what's best for your company and your company's situation.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Anyone who has, I'm not sure if the rest of the people were able to hear what I said, so I'm just repeating again that if you're interested and if you want help with taking the stress out of your quality management system, please feel free to reach out to Michael, or you can mention that in the post-webinar survey, which will be launched as soon as you exit the webinar. And if you're interested in bringing more efficiency to your audits, then if you're interested in auditing app, we offer, Mnemonic offers mobile auditing app. You can use it either on any mobile device, either on iOS or on Android, or even on web. So let us know. You can go to our website, mnemonic.com, to send a request, or again, mention it in the post-webinar survey.
Yeah,
sorry, Michael, you were about to say something.
Jessica, yeah, real quick. I also want to just add in that the McDay auditors use Mnemonic's auditing app. That's how we've gotten connected with Mnemonic. It is it's incredible. It's incredible. Highly recommended. If you are going to maintain your own auditing program, I would highly encourage you to use Mnemonic's auditing tool.
Well, thank you. That's really kind of you to say. Thank you. And I'm so glad that you like it, Michael.
It's great.
Thank you. Thank you. Then I think we will just wind up. Thank you all we still have people staying up until the last moment. Thank you so much for taking time out for this session. You can find the podcast. Mnemonic makes a lot of resources for quality professionals. You can go to our website and you can find, I can actually send it to you. Michael did a podcast recently on, if you are from the automotive industry, that would be interesting to you, on IATF 16949. It's called, our podcast series is called Compliance Insights, but we plan to have more episodes with I'm sorry, I just got distracted. So we plan to have more episodes with Michael soon. So thank you again, everyone, for your time, and we'll hopefully see you next month with Michael on integrated management system audits.
Excellent. All right, I appreciate it, Jessica.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.